Not a lot of people know this story.
Oh, wait.
But
You want to share?
I'll tell you the story.
Oh, I'd love to know the story. Oh, let's just start right there.
So, a couple years ago, I meditated into the new year, and I said, I want to clear whatever is in 2000, whatever the year that was, 15.
Mm-hmm.
And I sort of had the idea when I was a kid because I went by initials, so I never really was like, I never really was committed to my name. It was always just kind of like a placeholder, you know, an acronym, whatever. But I was like, well, what is a name, and why do we keep the name that we're born with? And I'm like, because I didn't choose this for myself, right?
So true.
I didn't.
None of us did.
And maybe your name's no good, like Jacob, right? In the Bible, he's like, his name was Jacob. It means like sketchy, like he was trying to get out first. That messed the narrative, right? And then Esau is like the hairy guy, right? And then later on in his life, like his name gets changed to Israel, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because he has an experience and he realized, like, I'm not that dude anymore. That's not me.
Yeah.
And so my name is my nature. And so why would I continue to keep a name that no longer relates to my nature? Because I'm a better person now. I'm not that person. I started off that way, but I went through a process and I became something different. So anyways, so I was meditating into the new year. It's midnight, obviously, and I hadn't thought about it for like years. I always knew that there was something, but I never really dug deep into it. And this is something everybody can do, because your name is like the one thing on this earth that you know is your name. But then you have to ask yourself, well, do you really know that? Because that name was given to you, and maybe you're really fortunate, right? Mm-hmm. Like John's dad, like John the Baptist, like his name is John, right?
It's John.
And it's like, well, none of your family's name is that name. And it's like, that's how we're going to call them, you know? And so maybe you're fortunate and your name, like your parents are really connected, and like that's it, you know? That your name is your actual name. And that's why, like, in the olden days, like, they didn't name you until after you were born. Why? Because
they needed to know who you were. Sometimes.
They needed to know what you were like. Like my first dog was a Dalmatian, right? And I had this intention, like I saw a Dalmatian one day on a picture, and I was like, God, I want this dog. This is a cool dog, you know. And I'm like, I'm gonna get a Dalmatian. I'd never seen a Dalmatian in real life.
Okay.
And I set an intention, and this is in LA. And then this guy, Gabriel, biblical name anyway, his name's Gabriel, like full on like Vato Cholo, you know, from the barrio. And I tell him, I said, Gabriel, everyone I knew had pit bulls, right?
Okay, yeah, come on, get serious.
I mean, that's tough on the street. Like I said, you walk to the store, you need a pit bull and a screwdriver. Like that's how you get from, that's a whole nother life. But anyways, so he's like, yeah, my buddy Abraham, he has this Dalmatian, and he keeps on getting out of the yard. And it was like 3 months old or something, just smart as could be. And he's like, and you told me you want this dog. He's like, he'll sell it to you for $75. He paid $600 for it.
Wow.
And I'm like, dude, get it, man. I want that. So anyways, I get this dog. He's like, I have him for like half a year, 6 months. He doesn't have a name yet. And I'm like, I don't know how to call him. And one day, like, these two dogs came into the yard, and he chased them out. And I call him Scrappy after that, because he is fearless, you know. So anyways, I digress. Yeah. So I'm meditating into the new year, and all of a sudden, like, meditation is to me is like an active virtue. It's not like a static thing, right? Like people talk about meditation as stillness, but there's no such thing as stillness. Everything's dynamic. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes when you quiet your thinking mind, you can connect to your heart, right? So I was like, all of a sudden, I felt a change, and I was like, well, myself, like, I know you, but you become someone else. And I said, okay, well, how do you call me? And it said to me, in English, it sounds like Asher. And so I was clear as day. It was Asher. It sounds like Asher. And then I said, well, what about a last name? and this is all just telepathically, right?
Right.
I can't make this stuff up. Like this is
Where we
my
can-
my own experience. I'm telling
Right.
you my experience. I don't
Right.
whatever if you believe it or not.
Right.
Whatever, I don't care. And it said there is no last name, and it said if you choose one, Feellove. And it's interesting because a while ago I looked it up on Ancestry. There's not one public record. There's no one in this world that has that last name. And because every name you have to declare it. I mean, because your name is like, well, you're a Rockefeller, or you're a so and so, or you're this, or you're that, or you're a Washington. Like that. You kind of like you're stuck with that thing because that's just the way it is. Like you're born into that line. But that's something that we have here on Earth. Like that's usually it's like Johnson, well, son of John, or
Right.
Jesus of Nazareth. It's like this person from that area over there,
Right,
like
right.
Van whatever from the mountain people, right?
Right.
And so that's how
Interesting.
that's how it came to. And there's more to that story about how it became Jasher or Yasher. Anyways, and language in itself is a limitation. So most of our truth is ineffable, right? It's like it's personal. You can't. Peace doesn't have a vocabulary. It does. I mean, word
Right.
is like it's powerful, but there's still because the reason why is because a dictionary is someone else's experience, right? Like someone say, oh, that's a tree, or oh, yeah, that's this, and then you talk about, okay, well, those are like. I was at a sweat lodge like a while ago, and we were talking about. I was talking to the White Buffalo, the guy who was leading the ceremony, and we were talking about the color blue, and he's like, yeah, the color blue is like a new thing. He's like, our culture in the old days didn't have blue. It was like black, white, and like the color of blood. And he's like, that was it. And then like it's like blue didn't really exist
As a
concept.
symbol word
Yeah,
to
as a symbol
define.
concept, as like the color of the sky, or like the color of the ocean, or like the color of water, like water, but water doesn't have a color.
Again, but don't you limit it by trying to give it that symbol of that word?
Well, we have to because
Yeah.
we're all exchanging concepts. But
Yeah.
if you've taken a speech class, most of communication is telepathic, right?
Right,
It's
right.
nonverbal.
Visual.
And even like from teaching yoga,
Yes.
like I realized after it came to me about after half a decade of leading classes, that most of what was happening was nonverbal. It wasn't what I was saying. All I was doing was just holding a picture of what a pose looked like, and what I had experienced that pose in my nature, because a pose has an attitude, right? A posture is has like a lexicon and a syntax, and each posture has an attitude, right? Like a word has an etymology. There's a meaning to it, and there's like a way that word came, like the word serendipity. It's like, we were going to this one place, but when we found this other thing that was even, and like everything we learned like in the process was even more important than the actual thing that we were going to do in the first place. And it was like, it worked out so good, but we wouldn't have done it if we hadn't left our house and like gone into the beyond, into the deep, like into that area that like nobody goes through, right? And like nowadays it's like we have a GPS, right? Like, and we want to chart like every little step, and we have to be so like certain of everyththing. I've driven across the United States 4 times before I had GPS on my phone. I was like,
And you
okay,
didn't-
here's the map. Like, go west, go east, and you just like follow the signs. If you get lost, you go ask somebody. You get there when you get there. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
So, anyways, every posture has an
Beautiful,
attitude. It
Okay,
does.
and dude, get us more
Ask me
into
questions.
get us more into the yoga, because we are really coming from a place of probably a lot of people might have an opinion of yoga. What is that almost?
Okay, so first thing, I kept on coming up to this term, meditation, and I was like, well, what is this? All these dudes, like, they're like meditation was like a big thing. I'm like, well, what is it? Like, I understand like the idea of a prayer, like petitioning some deity outside of yourself, right? But I'm like, but there's something else to this whole thing. Like, someone's not going to sit on a mountaintop and just talk to someone that's not there for hours or days or whatever. And And if you take this back to 1996, there wasn't really a lot of reading material out there about meditation. I mean, there was some stuff on yoga, but yoga in the West is still like kind of in its infancy. You know, it's kind of like weird and like, what is it? I don't know. And so I started college at 15 and a half. And I took military history 1 and 2, guidance 87, and a photography class, because that's all I could get, because I was like little man on the totem pole, right? And I was like, well, I'm gonna start banging out some of my whatever units.
Yeah.
I guess they call them credits now. So we had this career day, and this monk from Tibet was there in the quad, and so everyone I'd asked, like I'm like, tell me how to meditate. Nobody could give me an answer. No one, and I couldn't find like a visceral, like actual practice, right? Like William James says, like there's truth and then there's what's helpful. Right? And if you have to choose between the both, then choose what's helpful.
Okay.
And so I always try to be as practical as I can with life, because to me, like, that's the only way to be. It's the way to live. We have to make peace with all the polarities and everything. So I couldn't find it like what's useful as far as meditation. Like I could see like statues and different like pictures and stuff like that and mudras, but I had no idea like what was it. So I said, certainly this guy, you know, he's in his garb, like he has this like thing on, his head's shaved, he's from Tibet, like I'm like, surely this guy knows how to meditate, right?
Yeah.
I just hope he speaks English a little bit.
Right.
And so I go over to him, I'm like, bro, I'm like, how do you meditate? And I wasn't tactful. I mean, I didn't build any rapport. I just like, boom, I asked him straight up. And he had some different things that he had some like necklaces that he had like it was like a rosewood necklace, and I learned like whenever you go to a business, you always buy something. There's always an exchange of energy.
Okay.
Like whenever you go to someone's house, you always bring a gift. It's just hospitality, because of all the spiritual teachers that I've met in my life, the thing that you remember the most about people is their hospitality. Because the words, they fade and they have meaning for you at one point, and then later on it's not so much. But it's their hospitalities, because their hospitality is their nature. And so anyways, so this guy was just like he just had a different energy to him, like that I had ever experienced before, right? And it wasn't intellectual, something different. Because we had like PhDs in my family and doctors, and like everyone's very like my dad took the New York State exam and they had to rewrite it because it was like the way he answered the questions wasn't wrong or wasn't right, but it made them rethink the whole thing, right?
Okay.
And so I said, well, tell me how to meditate. And he's like, oh, it's very simple. Or no, he didn't say simple. He's like, very easy. But it's hard too, though. He said, find a quiet room. And he said, if you can't, take your shoes off. It's not important. But take your shoes off. I said, okay. And he said, sit with a straight spine. Backbone, he was like this, backbone is straight. Backbone is straight. And I said, okay. And he said, focus on your breathing. And he said, no attachments. And then I said, well, anything else? And he says, the practice begins with forgiveness and it ends with forgiveness. And that was it. So I was like just about 16 at the time. I didn't know it, but I had an accident when I was in a coma shortly after that. That's a whole nother story. And so I did that. I would sit down, it was 5 minutes, 10 minutes, I'd just sit down and I would just do what he said. And all of a sudden I started to go to a different place. Like I could feel myself, and it was scary. And I for a while I quit it because it was like it was too much. I wasn't ready for it yet. There's a great teacher, Shinru Suzuki. He was a Zen teacher, and worked with Steve Jobs. And one of his students one time, he had a pack of cigarettes in his pocket, and he said, teacher, he's like, meditation is hard, and he said, it's no more harder than quitting smoking. Because when you meditate, you have to quit on fear. You have to quit on anxiety, because you're living in the present, right? And all thinking has an element of fear. Like if you think about any topic, you can find fear in that topic. Are we on break?
3 minutes.
So that's what he said to me, like, was so powerful, because he said it begins with forgiveness and it ends with forgiveness. And I didn't really like intellectually we get concepts and ideas, but oftentimes what those look like in practice is completely different, because you could believe something and it doesn't do anything. Like it doesn't change your life. It just creates more polarity for you, right? And you can learn something and that doesn't mean anything either. I mean, it can, right? It can, but it doesn't necessarily mean anything. But when you know something, then you're different. Like your reality is different. And that's what meditation is. It's like, if there's one topic that I can encourage anybody to know, to not read about, but to know,
Yes.
is to know yourself. And the only way that you can know yourself is to spend time with yourself. And there's no substitute for that. There really isn't. And that's not a philosophy. It's not a religion. It's not a dogma. It's a practice. And it's dynamic, because what you know about yourself is always changing. And yourself in different environments and different arenas. It's like, and there's so much to who we are inside that one lifetime isn't even enough. But the more you know, the more clarity you have, the more strength you have, the more peace that you have. In the Tibet, they call it an abiding calmness, right? So
quickly, you need to let us know the community classes that you offer, where you're located, how to get in touch.
So yeah, we're on 558 East Riverside Drive. It's in the Rio Plaza.
Just down the street from us.
Just down the street. If you live in town, you can always just come in and do a week. We let everyone do a week, complimentary. 558 East Riverside Drive, BHOT.com.
Thank you so much. It's great to have you here.
Likewise. Namaste.